call the meeting to order at 6:36. And just before we start, I just want to comment. Last week we had a meeting that kind of was nasty, and some people had asked about canceling it. The weather was nasty. The meeting was nasty too, just because there was not enough people there. But I just, one of the things is I don't feel like it's up to me to cancel a meeting. It wasn't too bad earlier. It got worse. John has to leave about 2.5 hours before meeting if he's traveling to make sure he's there on time. So there's been no way to catch him. So my thought was, we hold it. If you can make it, you can. But don't, it's not that important. You risk your neck to get there. And I think that's what we'll do. And we just had an informal discussion on some things because John needed some input to be able to send stuff up to the state. Nothing we did was set in stone. It was just, we gave him some direction and we tried to base it on, what we had been hearing during the meetings. And we'll be able to bring that up again tonight. So we thought that since we were there, we should kind of go over that stuff with John. The other thing we did also was we did have a Dover parent who came who had some questions, and we tried to answer his questions. And it was probably the same questions, some of the things you sent me were the same things that he said. So I thought, we tried to answer his questions, and that's basically what we did. So although we did give some direction to John, again, none of it was something was set in stone. I felt a lot more comfortable when we had a Wardsboro person there too, so it wasn't just Randy and I, making the decisions. And even Laura, she got caught in an accident too, down at the bottom of the hill at Dover Hill, so she couldn't get around it. So, it was a tough thing, but I think from now on, that's what we'll try to do is, if there is nasty weather, unless John calls and says, Rutland snowed in and he can't get by, or that they shut the border down, just south of Rutland and he can't get into our area. We'll try to have.
Don't give them Montpelier any ideas.
They've had those ideas for years. So I just want to comment that, and I'm really sorry, and we couldn't do that, or we couldn't, but it's really a hard thing, and no matter what decision you make, you're always wrong. So we usually run around and do introductions, so we'll start with Mike, I guess.
Mike Murphy, Wardsboro School Board.
Jill Dean, Wardsboro.
Chip Vickery, Dover School Board.
Dwight Warren, Wardsboro.
Rich Werner from Dover.
John Everett, ESBA Consultant.
Randy Capitani, Dover.
A minute taker, and Anita, say hi.
Anita, Rafael,
There they
Anita, and our arrivals.
Did you guys go to Dover?
No.
Okay, good.
All right. That makes us feel better.
So we just did introductions. Can you do your, can you guys just...
Lucy Grotwick, Marlboro.
Dan MacArthur, Marlboro.
Carol Ann Johnson, Marlboro.
And we just started. We were waiting for you guys. I did get, Celine said she wasn't going to be here tonight.
Yes.
And then we're not sure about Laura. She's had another meeting. She's going to try to get here. And we just talked about canceling meetings and what happened last week. And we did have somebody from Wardsboro. We did have a couple from Dover. Peter came up from Whitingham. So we kind of just had an informal discussion because John needed some information. And as the email went out, and Danny, thank you for bringing that up. Whatever the things we kind of pointed or gave to John were stuff from the committee, kind of where we've been going. And none of it was set in stone, so we can move on. And we can change it. It was just to give him something to work with. We did it, we called the meeting, we did introductions. Do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda? Okay, if not, we have the minutes of October 13, 2016 to approve. Would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll move to approve them.
And do we have a second? Okay, Chip and Randy made the motion and Chip seconded it. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. We got public input. Caroline, again.
This is a message from Laura. She's at the Agency of Education meeting at WCSU in Whitingham, including 2 of our other towns. I am hoping to make the tail end of this meeting if possible.
Cool. So, public input, Caroline? You're the only boss.
No, nothing.
So moving right along there, we got a communications update, the election day brochure. I mean, do you want to talk about that, or?
Sure. So, first of all, I want to thank you all for your comments. I tried to put in as many as I could, and I communicated that back to Rich. So this is the brochure. I guess you all got a final copy of it. Well, I don't have the inside. Anyway, I took care of distributing for Wardsboro. There's 150 at Town Hall, and any leftovers will redistribute elsewhere. And we figured out that close to 70-something, 80-something people in Wardsboro have already voted, so we didn't go crazy on printing brochures. And then the brochure is posted on the website in several places. You can just click on our brochure and it comes right up and you can read that. So I anticipate that this piece has a short shelf life, because once the articles are ready, then will be more bigger news about getting stuff out to the public about where they can review the review the report, and where you're gonna have your public sessions. So that's one thing. I continue to send out the take
Well,
home.
let's just, so this one I passed out is the draft one that we had the last meeting. So Marlboro, Dan, were you heading that up, getting printed up?
I think Selena
Or
said she,
something?
didn't she say she was going to?
Yeah, I have been doing the ones, posting everything you've sent me into the front porch forum. I believe that you're right. Selena was going to do the.
Get her to say that.
Let's just make sure, you guys just follow up on that, make sure, I don't know how long she's gone. So in Dover, I brought them to school, we were gonna make 200, and we're gonna put them out at the elections, in town hall. But I'm also gonna put some in the post office, the library, the town hall, all the different places that we kind of put our public notices to. So that's why we went for a bunch. And
We'll have a lot left over at Wardsboro, and I'll just redistribute them at the end of the day. So they'll be done. So thanks, everybody.
Was everybody
Thank you.
back then? No comments? I was talking to the guy in the paper today, and he was commenting about it, and he says that, we were really lucky to have him doing a wonderful job. So, and his pamphlet was really tough. I know there was a lot of chefs trying to help you cook it, so, but you did really good.
Thank you. The theory is if you send them enough stuff, eventually they'll write about you. So that's as hard as it gets. So anyway, I continue to send out the take-home notices to the principals. I continue to update them. Everything that happens gets a public service announcement, and that goes out. The poster that we did initially is out, and that will come down once the report is ready, and there'll be a new poster issued that'll go out to town clerks and schools, and everybody will say, hey, the report is ready, now you can go look at it. Here are the dates for our public outreach, or whatever it is format the public outreach takes. So that's coming up. Now, I had emailed Rich about deadlines, because we're coming up on a bunch of deadlines. As you know, the Wardsboro Bucketville News, they dedicated like half the issue to Act 46, all the stuff we've been writing, and that goes to everybody on the grand list in town. So if they get the Bucketville News and read it, they're gonna read all this stuff. So I think that was a good choice there. Their deadline is always the 15th of the month. So if you think you're gonna have stuff ready in December, I need to send them stuff by the 15th of November to say, hey, stuff's gonna be ready. So we're always like 2 weeks ahead. The Marlboro Mixer, their next deadline is December 15th for their January issue. So again, if you've got your dates in the calendar for the public outreach or whatever event you're gonna be doing, I need those by December 15th so they can come out 1st of January. So we've got this rolling thing here. And again, the last issue of the Bucketville News may or may not come out before town meeting. Sometimes it comes out the first week of the month, and sometimes it rolls into the second and a half week. So I think if, in terms of the Bucketville News, you definitely want to be in stuff for the February issue, which means the deadline is January 15th. So we've got to always anticipate what PR because of those deadlines. Thank you for posting to Front Porch. I continue to post for Front Porch for Wardsboro. And what else are we doing? Stuff. Questions? More stuff. Thoughts, comments? from a press point of view, you got stuff that you need more or less?
I got plenty.
You got plenty?
I think we've run everything you've sent. It has been edited,
Oh, of course.
but no, I'm pretty sure we've run everything you've sent. I think I got something today, it was too late for this week, about a change in the other groups.
The other groups meeting,
communicating.
right, they just changed that last night.
Yeah, less critical for our readership, but we will run it next week, I believe.
Yeah, yeah. I've been also updating Deerfield Valley News on the other committee, just in case there's overlap, because I know you have readers in Jamaica.
Oh, yeah, we do, yeah.
And-
we got about-
Well, new fame too.
And
Yeah.
Newfane.
Yeah.
So we've been keeping him up on that. So anyway, thoughts, comments, suggestions, stuff we can do more of or do better, stuff you hear from the community or other people or from the schools. And then also those deadlines. So in 2 weeks, I need to know some deadlines for information that we can start putting together. We good? Good.
Just Dan.
I just have one suggestion, Anita. In the short text section that you have here on the right hand, I think it would be
That's a
important.
draft too, so
Yeah.
it may have changed.
Yeah, well, would you like to go through that now, or should I just be directly?
Isn't it an end?
It's pretty much done.
It's
I
done.
Already out.
thought I printed,
Yeah,
Okay.
I thought I printed the other one. I thought I
Okay.
printed the final. I printed the draft, so I messed up. So just talk to her, that may have been
Okay.
changed. If
Yeah, you can just
Okay.
look on the website and see
And
what
see
the
what the
final
final
was.
is.
Yeah,
Okay.
because
Yeah.
mine are already out.
Yeah.
His are already out.
Yeah, and we printed ours already, Dan, so.
Fair
And
enough.
again, this is, I vision this as a short shelf life
Right.
piece. 2 weeks, we want to be rolling into something else.
And if there's something pretty obvious, it's specific to Marlboro, just, you know, if you think it ought to be changed, just let us know. And, you know, I don't think it'd be a big issue.
Will do.
And I can add an addendum to the page on the blog site. We're up on viewers again now. We're up to 1,600-ish or something. So again, I don't know if that's spots and spiders that are hitting the
I like
website.
spots and bites.
Over, and I'm sober today too. That are hitting that over and over again. But even if it's 50%, you figure that that's 800 or 900 people that have checked in and looked at something, whether
So
they just look.
that's a population of Dover.
There you go.
Um,
Yeah, and as I
it's like
said
1/10.
initially, we don't have to reach, a global community. We only have to reach the people in our own hometown. So I think we're okay. Okay, thanks.
So I just, as a follow-up, so there was what was that guy's name, Mike Farr here? Who was the guy from the?
Oh, Mike
Oh, fair, my
He's
favorite.
a good
So-
guy. He writes for Vermont Digger and the Pockets.
So he'd sent an email to Anita, who's forwarded it to me, so I told him my cell phone number, he called me, and I just basically, he had like 3 questions, and it was just where do we stand? I gave him some of the background, how this hasn't just been a 6-month thing. He asked when we started, I said over the summer, but I said really WCSU started, way back a year previous, and I went through our progression. One of the things he's been hearing a lot from people is about, closing schools, and he asked about, is this about closing schools? And I said, we really believe it's about looking for opportunity for students and, to save resources. And, we had actually written something in there about closing schools, but the state wasn't happy with it, so we have to talk about that. But, there's never been a discussion about closing schools. The other thing I stressed to him too was, it's not about one school taking over another school or 2 schools taking over a third, that, it's about cooperation, and that there wouldn't be, there's not gonna be a Dover school if this goes through, or Wardsboro or Marlboro, there'll be whatever the school is with buildings in different towns. So I just wanna really stress that, and he appreciated that, because he hadn't really picked up on that yet, so, and I don't know where he's gonna write it.
The Digger does a pretty good job on.
Well, he also says he writes for the Reformer now, the Commons, the Digger, the Banner.
They've been doing a pretty good job on Act 46 stuff. I think.
So I don't know, but I don't like to talk to the press because we're a group, and I was hoping, so if there's anything that you folks would also like to, I said I would bring this up, so if there's anything that I missed or something specific, and he asked if I would just let him know what we decided tonight about school closures, because that's kind of what he was basing his article around, I guess. And if there's anything else you guys think is important, let me know, we can definitely letting him know too that we'd really like to get this out there.
Yeah, if it comes up, Rich, and I think that it should, mention again Marlboro's advisable status in the study committee, advisory, or whichever one it's called. Because I think that's a really crucial piece of information for people living in Marlboro, is that this merger might happen with or without, could happen easily with or without Marlboro.
Well, it's still a question whether all three of them.
Right, perhaps advisable all the way around.
So because that's a committee decision, again, Dan, and that we expected, I think I can say that Marlboro, how about if I say that Marlboro members are really pushing to make sure that at least they're advisable. And I think that would be a really fair, because we don't know until we kind of put the final thing together. Is that fair?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Is everybody okay with that? Okay, we'll move right along then to information from previous meetings that need to be answered. Remember, we had that big list the first time we met here, and now we're down to assets and debts of each school. And John's getting paper ready to hand out, I think.
Well, not about that.
Oh.
We've made some progress on that. I just need to get the last Dover audit. But otherwise,
So this one you really don't have it
I don't have that for Dover. I have for the other two towns. All I had for Dover was sort of some cash balances. And the superintendent's office doesn't have your audit.
Well, no, we don't go through that. We don't go through that.
Well, I know, but if I were your superintendent, I would have your audit. I'll tell you that for sure.
Sometimes there's reasons why things happen.
Yeah, well, that would be a reason why. But anyway,
So, work on the articles.
This,
So, we kind of had started going through the articles last time in Marlboro, and John sent the paperwork to this education department, and they sent back, they had issues with 4 items. So, I don't know how you all want to do this, but I don't think it makes sense for us to sit there and read through each article again.
no.
And what I'd like to do is I'd like to maybe review the reply that we got from the state. Let's look at those 4 things first, and then let's, pardon? Yes.
Yeah. I'm amazed they got that back so fast.
And the second thing then I think I'd like to do is, or maybe, can we do the or questions first that we did last time?
yeah, that's fine.
Why don't we start with the or questions? So there was, yes,
Well, I think that's fine to do the or questions first, as long as those weren't one of the things that the state.
and they
had
are,
issued.
and I think that we can bring that up when we.
So
get
let's
to the or.
work at it all together then.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
So-
I can ask these out, the 4 questions.
sure. But there were some ors that were in that write-up, and at the last meeting, Randy, Mike, and I just kind of threw out some thoughts we had.
And that was in your email.
Right. So
I got one, we can share it.
everybody should be aware of it.
Carolina wants one.
There's several more, I think. More.
Yeah, there's extras, because I brought my own.
Okay.
So let's start off.
So I will email back over
It's
this
not on
one.
the blog site, it was in an email.
Get your own? Good, you got that?
So the 4 questions start on page 30. The first question is on page 13 of the Articles of Agreement, and it's necessary advisory town school districts. Dan, lead the way on this one. So there was 2 ors. There was either going to be Marlboro District is advisable, and then there was all the schools could be advisable. And without at least 2 towns joining it, no unified school district will be formed, the current governance structure remain in place. And we've been bouncing around a lot of the idea of allowing all towns to be advisable, and that way, if for some reason Wardsboro decided not to, and Dover and Marlboro said yes, if we could still do it. If Marlboro is the only advisable, and Dover and Wardsboro are necessary, and Wardsboro chooses not to, then it doesn't happen. So we thought that we originally discussed all towns being advisable, and then I've gotten some feedback from some people that some towns that may not be good because, what happens if Marlboro and Wardsboro decide to do it and Dover does, and then you got a town in the middle and they can still form, but is that really going to work? So it's open for discussion, and we need to make a decision, and so that John can move forward.
I guess I don't see that Marlboro should even be a part of this discussion because it's not, I don't think it's going to affect Marlboro a huge amount. Wardsboro and Dover should decide. We would definitely want to be advisable, Marlboro would, but whether Dover and Wardsboro, I think we should sort of stay out of it.
I don't think you want to do that, because for just what Rich said, if everybody's advisable, and Marlboro votes to approve it, and Wardsboro votes to approve it, you're in a district with Wardsboro, and is that going to be something you guys, is that going to be tenable to you?
Well, I wouldn't want to be saying to someone from Dover or Wardsboro, I feel that you should be advisable. I feel like you should make up your own mind about that.
Okay, just want to make sure we're clear.
We may all be on the same page too, though.
If
Yeah.
Dover was necessary, then if either of the other two went along or didn't go along, it would still work.
In terms of a geographic
In terms of
contiguous
geographics.
district. I don't think that's an angle anybody's looked at before.
And that's something we could do.
Yeah.
Just as to play sort of, I don't know if devil's advocate is the right one, but
Very good.
the Ethan Allen, I'll be the Ethan Allen advocate. The story Rich was telling me about. Anyway, if any two districts form this unified union and the other didn't, I have a very hard time believing that the third one wouldn't be put in by the state.
I don't think it'll happen. I know it won't happen. It can't happen.
It can't?
No, because if Dover, here's some scenarios.
It's only if Marlboro.
Right, Marlboro cannot be forced into anything
Right,
because
right.
they have that K-8, so that
Well,
keeps them
I'm
out.
saying if Marlboro approves it, no matter which one they're
Right.
with, Dover or Wardsboro, the other one
Maybe,
is a very good candidate to be put in with. Does everybody understand what I'm talking about?
Yeah, but that wouldn't happen until 2020?
No, it happened at the same time because the plan has to be submitted by the state board on November 30, 2018.
but on the other hand, Wardsboro, Dover, or Marlboro could also present to the state, an alternative structure, and the state may buy it. I'm trying to keep a straight face, but. So there's that option there too, so I'd like to, maybe Wardsboro, we should hear from you guys.
Yeah, I just have a couple questions. If just one town votes votes in favor, do the articles get thrown out? In other words,
It doesn't happen.
then it doesn't. So you have to have two approved. Okay, so
You need 2 to 10.
2 to 10. That's what I thought. So, because you're saying the state might suggest that we be part of it even if the town votes it down. So before Wardsboro's perspective, most likely will happen. I guess my question is, will the state throw out all this work that we've done in the articles and give us a new set of articles to abide by, or will they continue to adopt the articles that we worked so hard on?
I don't really know that they've figured that out.
That would be my sense that they have. Yeah.
But I can guarantee y'all one thing, is if, let's just say for argument's sake, that Marlboro and Dover said yes and Wardsboro said no, and then the state comes down, and John, you can correct me if I'm wrong, and says, hey, guess what, Wardsboro, you're joining them anyways,
Right.
and you don't have a say. I don't believe that we get the Wardsboro hold harmless or the Wardsboro small school grade. That went away by us not voting. And, just looking at the numbers last time, remember that, Wardsboro brings to the table almost 6 phantom students. Wardsboro also brings to the table $130,000 in small school grant. That right there is close to $200,000 that we would then be having a district that would have that much less. Marlboro brings to the table, I think you're around 80 or 90 in your small school
I
grant.
think it's a little more.
112 plus, I think you guys have 2 phantom students?
No,
No,
Those numbers
And I know Dover gets like 70,000, we have no phantom students, so we're bringing the least to the table in terms of the grants that we bring forward. And if we all decided not to do this and the state puts us all together, we're gonna start off with a $300,000 or $400,000 less than we have, kind of now. And we don't get the 864 too. either that all goes away. So, that's something to consider. And that's why, my feeling had always been is if we make everybody advisable, at least the two schools do it, they will receive that. If we were to say Dover and Wardsboro are required, and for some reason Marlboro and one of the other towns voted, we've hurt them by making that required of anybody.
But correct me if I'm wrong, if 2 of the 3 towns vote to join, the articles aren't thrown out because they're
No.
agreed upon.
Correct.
And do those towns get the hold harmless in small school? Okay. So
But-
1/3
Just
of
to be
it.
clear, the whole harmless is gonna trail off to everybody.
Eventually.
Yeah, over time, but,
Right.
But what happens
So you have
is,
2/3 of
again,
collaboration that could happen.
if Marlboro and Wardsboro do that and they get their money, then, if Dover gets stuck into this group, they're not bringing any of that with them.
Right.
And it just creates a burden on that group, there's less money for that group to work with.
I don't know how to explain that to voters.
Yeah, it's difficult to explain, though.
Virtually impossible.
It's not very difficult, it's if you don't vote for it and they force it on you, this is what you've lost.
You'll lose.
I mean, to me,
You'll end up, right, you'll end up being in the same situation, and you'll also.
you may end up being in the same situation with less benefits. So,
So how is it better to have, well, advisable, and just guarantee that, or have a better chance of getting the articles approved, because 2 schools, a better chance of approval?
that's just my thought, but,
I think,
again,
I know some of the concerns in Wardsboro was they're not sure what they're voting on, the town people weren't exactly sure what they're voting for, and I think that's an issue that, communication purposes, are they voting, so the original meeting that we had here, there was a sentiment that we're gonna combine with Dover, and so now it's like, well, we're not really voting for that, it could be voting for that, we could be voting for with Marlboro, or not at all, so I think that's a concern as well, but I think your points were good.
hang on a second, let me just get the committee first. Did any of the other 2 Wardsboro folks want to weigh in at all?
Well, I think after today, we should have that answered.
Right.
I thought from the beginning that Dover and Wardsboro were necessary and Marlboro was advisable. I really didn't realize until we talked about it more recently about everyone being advisable. I'm just afraid if we don't go into this being necessary rather than all advisable, that it could fall apart and then we're stuck with a state mandate.
I mean, as a committee, I'm
Can
supposed
you
to
talk a
make
little
it.
bit more about that? Because I'm not quite understanding, I just want to try to understand.
Well, it feels like, there's gonna be a big problem of getting all 3 of the towns to say yes to it, as far as everyone coming together. But if there's 2 that are already out there saying, yes, we are sticking together, and this is what we'll do, I don't know, I think the
Let me
advisable
just see,
part makes
repeat
it
back
so
just to make sure I
iffy.
understand. So, this is about the public perception. So that if this committee is saying Dover and Wardsboro are necessary, you're thinking that's conveying to the public a stronger message about saying yes.
Mhm.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood what you're saying.
Okay.
I can't argue with that perspective.
Okay. Any other thought? Are you good?
Necessary, advisable. I agree that it's going to come down to the perception that the voters are going to get, because at the end of the day, it's left to a vote. So it doesn't matter. I know it matters for how we submit, but really the 3 towns have to agree.
Or if it's advisable, any 2 towns agree.
Right.
Or if Dover and Wardsboro are mandatory, 2 towns have to agree, and the 3rd one gets out there, so.
And it's still up to
And it's still up to the
2
voters.
necessary towns to agree.
Right.
Correct.
And again,
Not a given.
so that kind of pays a disservice to Marlboro, because, Marlboro may vote, 90% of the voters may vote for this, and in Dover Dover say that only, 49% vote for it, and 51 vote against it, and in Wardsboro, 99% of the voters wanted it, then we've killed the program, or Dover's killed the program, because we were necessary. Or it could be Wardsboro votes 90, 49 to 51. And that's the only reason I was thinking.
But it doesn't kill the program.
It does.
The two necessary.
The two necessary.
Oh,
things
right,
to
yeah,
do.
yeah.
But you say Wardsboro, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry, go ahead. And then-
You say Wardsboro's gonna vote for it, but what we're suggesting, I think, is.
No, I'm saying if they, I'm just
Yeah.
using ifs.
But what are they voting for? That's the
They're voting for a union school district with possibly with Dover
Right.
and Marlboro, or one or the other.
Right.
But they're voting, what you're voting for is that you think that a combination with another school, we don't know if it's one or two yet, and we don't know if it's both or, which one, that may offer more opportunity for our students, may offer, some financial security for the school, for the town, and for the voters and the taxpayers, and a better product.
Okay.
And remember, this isn't just for 1 year, because, 10 years down the road, if we follow our trends, if Wardsboro's got 6 phantom students, that says to me that you guys are losing a lot of students. Where are you gonna be in 10 years if you keep at that same pace? I know that Marlboro and Dover have been very fortunate in the last few years to kind of maintain, but we're not growing like we were in the 80s, when we were putting additions and portable classrooms on and trying to, figure out where we're gonna put all our students, and there's nothing that shows that that's gonna change over the next 10 or 20 years. It's only gonna get worse. Trip, you were going to comment?
No, I was kind of following along with what Joe was saying, that I think as a committee, we sort of need to, I don't want to say establish precedent, but make a recommendation to the voters. I mean, we're the ones who've been studying this for months and months and months, and when you start getting into the nuances of advisable versus required and all the rest of it, are they going to really understand what's going on? So I thought we need to come out with a more stronger, whatever you want to call it. And you're right, though, then we run that risk that Dover could end up blowing the whole thing up.
Or board?
Or I should say the voters. of
Either
Dover.
one.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
This might be a stupid question. What do the voters see? Do the articles just go to the state, right? No, the actual voters actually
We
see it.
plan on having meetings once we get
Right.
the articles in all 3 towns, saying, here's what we're doing, here's why we're doing it. And again, we haven't come up with a conclusion yet either. This committee actually may keep going and say, hey, you know what? We're doing a really great job without this. Why are we even looking at this? And our conclusion may be that this makes no sense, or our conclusion may be that this is really necessary, it's very important. There might be a 6-4 vote. I mean, we don't know. The committee will have to, decide.
The actual ballot will show a scaled down version.
That's what I was,
Yeah.
so within the wording of that recommendation you were talking about, I don't know if it comes through.
My concern in a group of people I spoke with yesterday was that they think voting no means everything stays the same. And I had trouble explaining that voting no is a different option. It's not no. It's either yes, it's these articles, or no, some other plan that you don't know what it is. So that, I had a very hard time explaining that.
But that's pretty fair. And you're at the mercy of the state. You could still be at the mercy of the state even if you're
And
voting.
if I let the cynic in me come out, not that I ever do this. If you vote yes, we maintain the illusion of control that we're going to do what the state wants us to do. If we vote no, the state's going to do what they want us to do anyway.
But the state's gonna give us a little more money for.
Yeah,
Right.
make us feel better about ourselves.
That's the money. So, having back,
Well, I was wondering, how are we gonna decide
well,
this?
we're gonna do a vote.
Well, does each town, my question is, would each town decide what they would be? or
No,
decide?
this committee,
Okay.
remember, we're not, this is committee people, even though she's from Marlboro, it's the whole group. We're not supposed to be thinking Dover,
I know.
so. Well, I keep stressing it. Go ahead. Leave me alone.
Did
How
we
come
get
it didn't snow in Rutland today?
Did we get feedback from the state on this particular issue?
No, that I saw.
No, not.
So they don't really care whether we have necessary or all advisable? Okay, because that's important to know.
They did want us to make a name though.
We put them as advisable, all as advisable.
Right.
That's what I saw.
Okay, so here's the deal, folks. I think we've had some good discussion. Unless there's somebody that objects, I'd like to just maybe do a straw poll, what you folks all think. The options, I think we pretty much have two options, unless somebody wants to float the Dover being necessary and the other two being advisable. So I guess that could be a third option. So why don't we do the first one is that all schools are advisable. How many people would agree with that, would want to see that? Okay.
Would you say that? What did they say?
All schools are advisable. How many people would want to see Dover be a necessary and the other two advisable? Okay, and then who wants to see Dover and Wardsboro necessary and Marlboro advisable? So there you have it.
Okay.
So we're going to change that.
I think that makes the most sense.
Cool. No, and that's why I said it's nothing was set in stone, and I don't think that we're gonna get
So this
shouldn't
is
be
out.
a nasty letter about that from the state, because,
They didn't get nasty at all.
okay.
So how does straw poll go? The third one win?
It's Dover and Wardsboro are gonna be necessary. Marlboro's gonna be advisable. I don't know why I mentioned that, but. Okay, so the next item that was an order was on page 18. And it was school choice and school continuity. So we talked about in order to close a school, it must receive a positive vote of the citizens of the respective town. Or in order to close the school, there must be a majority, 2/3 of the vote of the board. The state had a problem with this because they didn't want us to tie the hands of the future board. So that is on the page,
Oh, the feedback from the state?
yeah, it's on the.
6, it's question 6.
Six, I'm sorry. So it's the second page down at the bottom. So their thing is, what would you like to do? So closure only if voters in a specific town approves. Does the study committee really want to tie the unified board's hands to make the decision that's right for the school district for all time? Most proposals include a similar provision, but for a short period of time, and sometimes followed by requirements subsequent to that period of time. Closure can only occur by some specified supermajority, which you have in there is a 2/3. And we should talk about the ability of the unified board versus the electorate to amend the articles. This is where it seems to me most often to be an issue. And then sell to the town. So let's not worry about sell for the town now. Let's just talk about, do we want to put the power in the voters' hands? My gosh. Or do we want it just to be in the board's hands? So what
Well,
do
the
you all?
voters of a particular town.
Right. Randy.
I think if you want to have any chance of this getting approved, you have to give it to the voters. I don't think you can leave it to a nebulous board, a future board. Not to say that that's necessarily right, but I think if you want any shot at this being passed.
We can put that in for justification, right, while we're doing it. Let them know. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask you, John, so then the second bullet here, we should talk about the ability of the unified board to amend these articles. We could put these in the articles, under what circumstances can the articles be amended, and therefore this become a moot point, whatever we write in there. Seems like the state isn't playing their hand on that one. Do you know what the...
So when I asked the VSBA what the going thinking is on this, if you put it in the smaller articles that the voters actually see, you put the language on the ballot, that then it takes another vote to change that. But it would be a vote of the whole group, group, it wouldn't be an individual town.
Because the voters have voted on
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
but if it's just in the articles in your report, it seems like that holds less weight. If the voters didn't actually vote on it.
Because it's sort of the fine print of the whole deal.
It kind of is, yeah.
Okay. Did you set that?
I guess so. I
Would you
guess
like to
my
comment?
point is it almost doesn't make any difference what we put in here now, because if it can be amended so easily, then, I mean, I think we should state what we want, and I agree completely with Randy's statement.
But maybe I didn't say it correctly then, because if you put in the articles that the voters actually vote on,
Okay.
that's not so easily undone.
Right.
It just will have to appear on the ballot, and then it's harder, it's a lot harder. I read that, so there was another report that came out from the state that they mentioned that. So I think
This
we
is,
would be
my
covered.
point is not a reason to disagree with
Yeah.
what's
No.
the motion on the table.
Okay. Anybody else from the committee? Go ahead.
I actually think it might be both. Shouldn't the board first vote to do this, and then that whatever the board votes gets presented to?
They would have to do
Have
that.
it anyway,
They would
right?
have to-
Okay,
they would
I
have
just
to
don't
do
see
that
it.
to get it on the ballot.
Anybody else from the committee?
Yeah, if you want to take everybody else first, though.
No, nobody else is, go ahead.
So it seems that the state also, huh?
I strongly agree with your sentiment. We have to pass it to the voters.
Yeah, so the only-
Give this town.
My other question would be, it seems like the state is saying, almost put an expiration date on that.
But
Do we want to do
I
that?
don't think we do, and I think we explain the reason we're doing this is in there, you know, to ensure that this passes, or to ensure that this thing happens. We feel strongly that this needs to be in there, and then let the state argue with us.
Okay. Yeah, and it doesn't sound like they're saying no, don't do it. They're
Right.
saying don't tie their hands.
Right.
Well, maybe we want to tie their hands.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. They pose the question back to us, does this committee want to tie their hands? And if the answer is yes,
Yes.
then bloody well, yes.
So is everybody, and we've had, you know, the interesting thing is we've had that discussion several times on some other places where we said, let's not tie the hands,
Right.
you know?
Right.
So we've acknowledged, I mean, I think, John, that should also be in, maybe in the report.
The report.
There are certain places that we've acknowledged that we didn't want to tie hands, but there are some places that we do. And these are not accidentally left in there. These are specifically in there for that reason. Is that okay with you people? Is there any other, from the audience? Anybody from the committee? Everybody okay on the committee? Audience? Nothing?
Makes sense. Everything you say, the thought in the back of my head is how are the voters going to understand this? We were just discussing that instead of presenting or talking about yes or no, it ought to be discussed perhaps as option 1, option 2. So option 1 is we accept these articles, option 2 is we accept whatever the state decides. Because we keep saying yes, no, and maybe we need to start saying option 1, option 2. And I have a question, like who designs the actual ballot? I mean, we're not there yet, but every time you talk about stuff, I think, how's this gonna look on the ballot, and who designs that?
We design it with the attorney. And we need
But I sent you a draft.
You have.
No, it didn't include the school closing.
No, but we need to, we'll add that. So here's, thank you, Anita. So here's, I think, you know, we've had this discussion, I think it's important. I think we don't have 3 schools within a mile of each other. And I think maybe, John, that really needs to be emphasized also in the report. And I think we need to emphasize the roads and the weather, and although we're contiguous, there is no I-91 that runs between any of us. And most of us are connected by dirt roads.
Well, I mean, now you're talking about school closing, and that's really, they're really not questioning that part. I mean, they're not, this is just about governance.
No,
But
but
where
we're
are we now?
closing,
I know, but,
but we're still on.
I know, but we're not, you're not, yeah, I don't think you need to worry about it. If what you've decided is you want to tie the hands, and I'll write some language to help with that, but.
Perfect. Okay, so do
Wouldn't it
I don't
touch?
think we need to vote on that, do we? I think we're all, we trust the voters, and we have for years. I think all the boards have really done a good job with that. I don't think there's any reason not to trust them anymore. Do we want to go the other or, and then we'll come back to this
Sure.
document? So there's one more or, it's on the next page.
Did we settle to sell the building for $1?
No, we're gonna do that after.
We're gonna come back.
Yeah. We're gonna finish the oars training and come back to the, so on page 19, and this is, for students that attend elementary schools other than the one in the student's town of residence. Oh, I forgot which one. Sure.
You pick the choice.
Choice.
And the state didn't have anything to say about that.
The other thing they said, well, that was minor, so it's not on your list, but it just said, include something about subject to provision of policies and procedures of the board.
Okay, so the two different ones was a policy guide administration in cases where circumstances it would be advantageous or appropriate for a student to attend an elementary school other than one in the student's town of residence, or can choose whichever school they want to attend, subject to the availability of space in the school and grade, prior to be given to children attending the school during the prior year, and no student residing in the town of the school will be denied access to that town. That's what we asked to be put in there. Does anybody have an issue with that?
My only question would be, if there's a baby boom in one of the towns, and, you know, suddenly 5-6 years down the road, they can't hold all the students from that town, are we tying them into the board?
Availability of space in the school.
No, but town, if you're in that
This one's
town,
from
They
the-
still
no
have to
student
have
in
the
the
problem
town.
now.
right, but this is, what this was supposed to do is this combining of administration and running the buildings is supposed to prevent that, so we don't need to move forward and build a new building if we have capacity somewhere else. So we could be tying hands, but then again,
Explain how we would be tying the hands.
No student residing in the town of the school will be not denied access to the school in that town.
Gotcha.
Which is the way it is now.
Right.
but again, that's, if we're not keeping everything the way it is now, this change is meant to,
I'm just saying, why would everyone have a problem with it?
because then the other two towns are gonna have to help build an addition on somebody else's, if you have to add on, where we're not utilizing the other two buildings to help us through, you know, that's, this whole thing was set up.
I think we probably have sufficient capacity in all 3 school districts right now. I'm just saying, you know, what happened, like 30 families relocated to Dover for some unknown reason, you know. And then suddenly we've got this huge influx of 60 or 70 additional students, and we only got room for 40 of them. And we kind of say, okay, all you guys in the North Dover area, you're going over to Mount Wardsboro, and all you guys down at this end are going to Marlboro.
But I could,
I was just
well, hang
wondering,
on, maybe, let me get to Randy, because he's had some
Okay, sorry.
information.
I lost my train of thought, but I guess I'm thinking that if we're gonna talk about opportunities, we have to have this in there in some way. I think if you leave it to the administration deciding, again, I'm thinking about what someone as a voter looking at this without the benefit of the weeks and dozens of meetings that we've had would say, well, what's in it for me? If I could pick and choose where my kid could go, I might be interested in that. But I think we also have to keep the language in there about not excluding a child from the building in that town, because that would be a deal breaker for some people. So, but your point is really valid, Chip. I mean, that's a real consideration too.
now is maybe a good time to jump back to the second sentence under number 6, amendment of these articles. I mean, I would think that going through the ordinary procedures, if we came to that situation, that this board would say, well, we're going to amend these articles to somehow.
The new board.
The new board, yeah.
We go away.
You're not going to be on it?
And that would be an extenuating circumstance that you could probably argue to the electorate,
Yeah.
not fairly easily, but you could argue. Hey, maybe we're gonna we'll take all the 6th graders and put them in one building, because that influx that you're talking about is gonna be from, you know, K through 3. We'll move grades around.
Just out of curiosity, can I ask you a real quick question? Do you know in Marlboro, what your capacity is and how many students you have currently?
We have had up to about 130, I think, crowded in there. We've we've got about 80 now, I think.
So say you got capacity for 40.
Yeah, but that was
So
too crowded.
half again as much.
We could put in another 10, 15.
Hang on one second, let me just, do you know what Wardsboro's
I mean, capacity, I know we're at mid-50s for enrollment.
and are you tight or you,
I think we've got a little bit of room to grow.
because, you know, Dover's got a little over 100, supposedly we're designed for 200. So, I mean, there's a lot of capacity in the building, so it may kind of almost be a moot point where I like your thought where, so if 10 years down the road it becomes an issue, it sounds like we all have enough capacity for the foreseeable future, then that new board can go to the voters or can amend it or do whatever they need to do. But I agree with Randy that this is really something that this is going to be one of the, because Wyndham Central has done such a good job and our 3 schools have done a great job, I think this is going to be one of the bigger selling points of the whole thing. That, you know, hey, I'm in Dover, but I love that program they're doing in Marlboro, and I want my child to go to that school for this, or to the building in Marlboro for the next couple of years. So, Mike, and then back to you.
So there was a level of concern raised at our meeting on Tuesday that would contribute to the attrition at some schools. So potentially that would encourage a decrease in enrollment, and it was not, obviously not looked upon favorably. So I'm kind of wondering how,
So it's self-balancing systems.
whether, or potentially lead to a school closing if there's less enrollment and it becomes a burden.
Dan?
I guess my question was for you on that one, John. Is there going to be another place in the articles where it specifically states how they can be amended? It seems like that would be
You know, that would be more about statute than it would be about, the article can't say how it's gonna,
be amended.
because then they can amend it.
But I guess, so really the question is, if the statute specifies that, then,
Well, like I said, my understanding is if the voters vote on a particular provision, has to be undone by the voters. Otherwise, everything else would be able to be undone by the But I do think, you know, I think it's underestimate the value and the importance of these articles in guiding the new board. I just don't think a new board would take these and run slipshod over them. It just wouldn't be the way people in Vermont work.
I wonder to Mike's concern, I mean, that could also be set up, although it says that they will be given such abilities gains. I was going to say, because the board could also set something up to prevent a school from everybody vacating the school to make the school building
But just geographically, it's probably not going to happen.
but remember, we also have to work on, you know, part of that will be the new board will work on transportation back and forth, so that will make it a little easier. And there's a lot of students that live close to the Dover school in Wardsboro, and there's Dover people that live close to the Marlboro school, and, you know, vice versa, depending, you know, which way you go and which roads don't get plowed in the winter. So there could
Or
be
which way mom and dad are going to work in the morning.
Yeah, that's the other part.
That is the other part, because, like you said,
But
roads
if-
and commuting.
But also, if parents, you know, if that's gonna help parents and make it easier for them to work and do their job and still, the child still gets a great education, you know, isn't that what we're here for? Isn't that why we wanna form this group? Not to make sure that, you know, buildings are kept open. I want to make sure that parents can educate their kids a good education, and wherever that needs to be where it's convenient for people, so.
John, this is for you. I think at the last meeting, or maybe 2 meetings ago, you said you were superintendent in, was it South Burlington that had 3 elementary schools?
Yes.
And were they able to move between buildings, or was that marked off
We
geographically?
did, it was marked off geographically, and we moved people on a very limited basis.
By recommendation of the administration and staff.
Yeah.
And did you find that to be a problem?
No?
No. You didn't have parents clamoring, I gotta get my kid in that school because so-and-so.
No,
Or was that
if there were
case by
more of
case?
the culture that we're talking about here, we definitely would have had exodus from the school that's right under the airport.
For obvious
High
reasons.
poverty
Yeah.
and it's noise.
Yeah.
But each of the schools just had its own culture and value as well, too. So people really liked belonging to the central school or that. And it was a huge loyalty.
So what about?
That governance structure might have been more like the first
First.
Yes.
So the top one doesn't say you can't move, it just says the administration will make, there will be a policy that the board will develop. So what kind of policy did you have from your board that allowed you to move students? What did it say, or what was in it? Was it a fairly?
I think I just said yes or no.
I mean, we have a policy on grade advancement or retention, that although parents can make a recommendation, the final decision is based with the administration and, would that work for people? That there could be, this new group could work on a policy that still allows it, but there would be guidelines.
I'm kind of lost about where maybe you should do a straw poll on which one first. Because we might be going down the.
Yeah, I think let's pick one.
Okay, so the first one, let's go with the one that we recommended last time that you sent up to the state, which is students can go to whichever school they want, but you cannot be denied access to the school in the town you live in. Who would be interested in seeing that move forward? 1, 2, I got 4 of you, right? So you guys lose. Oh, you guys win, the other guys
I'm
lose.
abstaining.
Oh, you're abstaining? Okay. Because I'm going to say there's only 3, there's 4 to 3. So,
I would have liked to have seen sort of both of those together rather than or.
Well, the state said we needed to put in a line at the very beginning that said, subject to the policies and procedures developed by the board, families will have this choice. That's the combination of both of them.
So that's what they're recommending to do.
Yeah.
So that seems like a fair solution.
So we allow the future board to make the
To
decision
develop the final policy.
of how students will move among potentially 3 elementary schools in the combined district.
And that policy can be changed.
and yeah, the policy's changed by the board, the administration administers it, and if a parent feels they were wrong by the administration, they get to go to that board and sell their case.
So that's not
I would
in this.
insert it after this sentence. Subject, families of the students who go K through 6 will be able to choose school they attend, whether it's based on the school or to policy developed by the board, something like that. And get carried out front that way.
Which that board would hopefully have input from the administrations and the.
From, in theory,
The way
from
normal
us,
policy is
from,
developed.
they can take.
There's
it
other
from
policies,
families.
there's got to be sample, I'm sure.
Because you have to have a policy regardless.
Right.
You can't just have.
There's policies in place right now for
Right.
Great, trying to forget those things.
or early admission based on
We're in retirement mode. Good man. Okay.
Is that like the worst?
So essentially,
The end was 3.
Yeah.
the first one says basically it says the board will develop, so the board is required to develop a policy for students to attend other schools. They're required to do that.
So just, the thing what we're doing with this is, we're kind of giving guidance on what that policy can do.
Right.
So if there was a thing that said, if we decide on our articles agreement that there was going to be no movement at all,
Right.
and the board would develop a policy to do that, if they needed to, then that guides our hands.
Since you're doing it that way, I am wondering, let me just run this by to see if this makes sense, what we're just looking at.
So page 19 still?
No, well, mine's 20, but whatever. Families of students. I'm just wondering where it says, the last sentence, if you're saying sort of subject to policy, where it says no student residing in the town, maybe it should say priority will be given to children residing in the town or attending school during the prior year. Or do you want a stronger sentence like we have now? Do you understand my question?
Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to add something to that, because also it should give priority to if you have a sibling attending that school.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
he's
have
added-
that in there.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
He's added, I can see his computer, he's added it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what is exactly, what exactly did the state say about this? Because
They just suggested we add something about policy, that's all.
Okay.
It's not.
Which was kind of taken from the.
That's why I didn't in here,
And that
because it wasn't a big deal.
So is
But do
everybody
you like the strong sentence, or do you want to include it as a priority?
I like the stronger sentence.
Strong sentence? Okay.
Well, I'm only seeing two head shaking. Is there more than two though? So who likes a strong thing? Raise your hand, a stronger sentence.
The way we have it now.
Right, so there's only three.
What do you mean?
I'm abstaining, so.
Okay.
That line, no student residing in the town school will be denied access
Oh,
to.
that's just,
Are you okay with that?
That's a strong sentence.
yeah, that's great.
Okay, so there, that's a majority.
Good, thanks.
You okay then?
Yeah.
Okay. So those are all yours, so do we want to go, to the letter from the state? So let's go back to the letter from the state.
Yeah, this is my memo to you. My thing is like long, but a lot of them are very small kinds of things, so. I'll send that to you.
So this is the edited, abridged version.
This is the abridged version.
Thank you for bridging it.
Yeah.
That's all the state memos. So on page, so this is on page one, or this is just number one? No, okay, so one. AOE wrote page 7. Third.
So we're in, actually,
So you're back into
we're
the,
back into the report, right?
Or probably don't even need to. You might be able to make all the decisions based on what I put in. The statement was made in the report, there are not deficiencies in the existing schools. Now it needs to be reworded so it sounds better, but the question is, does the committee believe that the schools are fine right now? There's no huge deficiencies in the schools.
So it's some.
well, I think every school's passed their budget. I think no school's have been sued. I don't think there's a school here that people aren't happy with the school. The only reason we're doing this is because the state told us we had to, or we're gonna lose money. Is there anybody that would disagree with that?
Okay.
And why don't we word it that strong, and maybe the state will wake up?
Well, all they want to know is who's saying it.
That's right.
They're just putting voice to it. So
Well,
let's say the committee feels that way.
The committee, and I think the boards and the voters have for the last several years.
Is that dangerous putting it in there, because this is gonna be, the voters are gonna read that as well. And getting back to her yes or no vote, you put something that strongly in there, sounds like,
Yeah, I'm sorry,
saying, they may see that and say, why are we doing this?
because the state told us
Because
we
we're
had
being
to.
overruled.
I know, but, okay.
And we're gonna lose a lot of money if we don't. And
Well,
it takes money to run a school.
I won't make it,
I do
I won't
see
make it blink.
Okay.
One thing I've learned in journalism all these years, Rich, is you never attribute an idea to somebody who you can't confirm said that idea. And we can't sit here and say all the voters in all 3 towns feel that.
The committee.
We can certainly say the committee feels that way,
Yes.
you know.
I mean, as a board member did, and as a board member, Mike and Dan, could you say the boards feel that way? The school boards?
But
Well,
you're not
we've also
you're not
got
authorized
board
to
members.
speak for your boards, though. You could go to the boards and ask them to say that. or
Yeah.
not, but
I
I don't think it's, I think this is
Fine,
fine.
okay.
Yeah, I agree with John. Just say the committee feels. I
Okay.
agree with that.
So go on to number 2.
Yeah, you need a name.
Okay, the Rich Warner Memorial School District.
Elementary doesn't
More
work
elementary.
because you're a pre-K-12 district. You just use choice that you are, you pay tuition for,
We can do
It's
anything we want.
yeah.
Let's have the John Everett.
Yeah, there, I wouldn't do that either, but, what's the area here? Do you have a name, you know?
Some of them are, we're in the Deerfield Valley, you're in the West River Valley, and you're in the.
The Connecticut.
Okay, West Deerfield.
How about the 3 Valley
Yeah.
School?
Tri-Valley District.
Dry Valley, fine.
Water flows in all directions.
Valley Cube.
Valley Cube.
Can I make a suggestion?
We can't, there's no way.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we let John think of a good name and make some suggestions?
You don't pay me enough to.
Maybe that's how we get voters excited. We give them,
Yeah, good.
we get them to, you know, have.
We have a contest. How's that?
Why don't we
Okay, we got a contest.
Because if you don't do it tonight, you're not
Facebook,
gonna.
on Facebook, do the Facebook.
You don't have to.
Do it quick.
The
We
Facebook.
have a meeting next week, can we decide next week?
Sure.
Okay, listen, let's do that. Let's get it out there, Anita, get it out there that we're looking for a name.
Sorry.
No, I think that's,
We
I think
can't
it's,
hear there, come on here.
I think
I
that's
don't
not a
think you
bad
can
thing.
do that, because he's got to have something to put in the
No,
report.
don't worry about me. Don't worry about me.
No, we would get it, we're meeting next week,
Okay.
so just if anybody has any suggestion, and we bounced a couple, we had Valley Cube, we had Tri-Valley, we had John Everett Memorial School District.
What's the longitude and latitude of the middle of where everybody meets? That might be kind of fun.
Nice.
So just ask for people to throw out some suggestions, and then get them to me like Wednesday night, and I'll make sure we get them out to everybody, and then next meeting we'll make a decision. And talk to your boards, and I'm gonna send something over to the superintendent's office and just see if anybody in their office has a, and let's just, have a little fun with it, folks.
So the
for
language
principals,
would
too.
be, if
Yeah.
approved, what do you want the new school district to be called?
Yeah.
Okay,
Do you have a suggestion for the name of the new school district if all 3 towns are involved?
okay.
Whetstone, Deerfield.
Whetstone,
Deerfield,
Deerfield.
Whetstone.
I said
Deerfield,
WMP.
Whetstone Regional School District.
Yeah.
Then they do it school district.
Try to.
I said WMP.
I think we want to stay away.
No,
Okay,
We gotta
guys,
stay away.
hey, so we don't get too far back. So number 2, we're gonna work on next meeting. Number 3,
So state law has the supervisory union being responsible for transportation. So that's what's supposed to
who
be.
wrote this? Who did this actually come from?
This is Donna Russo Savage.
Okay, can I write Donna Russo Savage in that letter?
Can you what?
Can I write her a letter or an email?
You can, but I don't know if that's gonna help anything.
Because I'm really pissed off about her note.
The,
Which is what? Can we see that, or is it?
There, it's right here. There is still concern that this SU is currently not in compliance with the statute, Rich.
No, and the reason, no,
But for
we've
reasons.
gotten a waiver,
Right.
and it's because that nobody will do it, and because the state doesn't understand that this is not Burlington or downtown
Right.
South Burlington.
I understand.
And I'm just really mad that you put a comment like that in there,
I
without,
agree with
she
you.
doesn't have a clue what she's talking
You
about.
guys own your own bus
We
too.
do,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
We're
if
not,
you-
we're not taking advantage of people.
We're saving them money.
if you turn the page, see if that's an acceptable wording for the article of transportation.
As long as you take a shot at her, then I'm okay.
I'm not going to shut it down.
Looks like attending damn schools.
Damn web schools.
No, I don't think it's acceptable because I think it's gonna cost us too much money. The best thing may be for us to do it as a school district.
So
And
let
if they have-
me just challenge you a little bit on
Yes,
this.
go ahead.
Just because they're doing it doesn't mean they have to do it any different than you would do it as a school district.
I just don't like it because it's not a continuation. They're not doing it now. So it says here, will continue.
Okay?
So it's,
let's-
it can't continue.
Okay, so we'll be providing, get the continue out.
So how about this? Transportation for the students attending will be provided the most cost-effective method possible.
Yes,
Because,
yes.
Because that's what we're doing now.
That's a big part of what this is supposed to all be about, so let's throw it back at them. Yes.
And Dan, does that leave it with us still on Norfolk?
Yeah, same thing, because Dover and Marlboro currently apply, or the SU applies for a waiver that allows us to do this. Whether that waiver will go away or not, I don't
well,
really know.
this new board can ask for the waiver, there's different people on it, and they wanna spend more money, they can spend more money.
So now it would be transportation services for students attending the Tri-Valley schools will be provided in the most cost-effective manner by the Wyndham Central Supervising Union in accordance with transportation policies.
No. Okay, yeah, I'm okay with
Okay,
that.
in accordance with transportation policies currently existing or maybe in the future. Okay, is that all right?
And do we want to specify that the current policy allows both Dover and Marlboro to apply for waivers to own their own buses?
I think we can do that, because
Right.
because Wyndham Central still has to apply for the waiver for us.
Yeah.
So if, Stephen and Bill have both written letters saying, nobody else can do it, I think that covers it.
Yeah.
What's state's policies currently existing?
What it is you're supposed to do all your transportation through.
No, I agree. It says,
Right. Oh, okay.
in our wording, it says policies currently existing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So we
your
have an
policies,
existing
you have a
policy.
waiver, it
Right,
applies
yeah,
for
that's
us.
fine.
Good.
Rock and roll.
Tell her that if they don't submit to our will, that we're gonna go up there and lay to waste.
Yes, Ethan?
Remember, there's an election coming up here in a week.
Yeah, but nobody's really none of the major candidates are arguing for Act 46 changes, and that's,
There's, depending on who's like, there's gonna be significant changes in both the state ed board and.
oh, I think in that there will be, Randy, but
So 4. I haven't done this when I've been at your meetings, but tonight.
You slave driver.
Can I say one thing?
When the man has an agenda.
I'm gonna say this every time we say transportation, safety. We really need to point out safety part of it.
Cost-effective,
And putting buses with no
safe.
seatbelts over these mountains really drives me crazy.
safe manner. Okay.
Article 9, page 16.
So here's it's really a pretty straightforward thing. The people that get elected for the one-year term, do you want them to go one calendar year, or do you want them to go 1 year after the district starts operating?
I think they need to go 1 year after the districts, because there needs to be some consistency, because there's
They
gonna
gotta
be a lot
get
of
more,
work.
but, yeah.
Is everybody okay with that?
I didn't hear what you said.
I think they need to be 1 year for the district operating, and I think there's gonna be a lot of work, and you're not gonna wanna be changing people out in the middle of that work and set up, because look how much time we spent just trying to get some broad articles. They gotta set up a school district.
So what I wrote was the board will organize in May 2017, and member terms will end at town meeting in the years after the board becomes operational. And then in the document, it would say the one-year term ends March 2020, two-year term, March 2020, okay?
Is that okay with everybody?
Is there a method for, because, you know, it's possible that the people who are here on this district to begin with won't want to continue on to them. Is there a way to replace one of them during that period of time?
If they quit.
Right, by appointment or some other method?
I don't
Or
know.
if
It's
it's
town,
town,
so
By appointment to the next
it wouldn't be the
election.
town anymore. Maybe, oh yeah, it would be, because they're representative.
No, the
from
towns don't appoint school board members anymore.
Well, however you do
The board
it.
does.
How do you guys do it?
The board appoints.
Okay, so that would say,
Yeah, whatever.
Right, it used to be the town would appoint positions everywhere, but they changed that
Changed it, okay.
several years ago.
So there's the process.
So people are comfortable that this is somehow covered, that there'll be a good way to get the people in.
It's the same as we're doing now.
Yeah.
No change.
yeah, because you really.
You
It's a
certainly,
district,
if you,
it's
if
still a
you- if there's a
district.
Well, you're gonna
resolution,
have-
you appoint till the next election.
You're gonna have 18 months or so of essentially 2 boards, right? Or
Right.
4 boards, the new board
Yeah.
plus the 3 existing boards
Yes,
for a
correct.
transition.
Okay, 5, this is about
This is-
election of future school board members and other public questions. Do you want those by Australian ballot, or how do you want those?
Well, I thought we
Election.
still had this up in the air because we thought the first budget had to be voted by Australian ballot, but we could go back to a meeting and a voice vote.
I went through Act 46 again on that, and I think the budget is still Australian ballot.
There's no way it can change.
Well, I've had a couple calls to David Sharp, we haven't connected, but I think he's
That's
working
worse.
on getting that changed. And I think at this point, it's
Change to,
to having a meeting of the 3 towns and voice vote on the budget.
Say that again?
There's a,
Why don't you guys grab a couple chairs out there? This is
Yeah,
right
right
here.
up here, so, yeah.
You don't block this guy.
it's over there.
You got that existing.
So, say it back.
There's a possibility that, and I've put it in here, that the new board would look for changing to a voice vote for the budget. But the question that we really need to resolve is what about other issues, like electing board members and other public
How
votes?
does
that we
boards
may
vote
have.
with board members now? From a voice vote on the floor, or do you do ballots?
Voice vote, unless it's close. And then it was.
Well, it's paper, but it's still.
Yeah.
Dan, what do you guys do? And
No.
Dover does
Ballot for board members, we have a ballot, that's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you just said.
Yeah.
You said Australian ballot.
Hey,
it's
Carolyn,
person.
you're not part of the committee, so you gotta be recognized,
But
please.
you can vote all day long, not at town meeting, for the person of your
Right.
choice for school
It's-
board.
That's what we're saying.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Carol.
But I don't think that's Australian ballot. I think Australian ballot is like a private vote you do on your own, but it's not a ballot that, whatever, it's a ballot. It's not at
Okay.
town meeting.
It's not a town meeting.
Right.
It's, that's, I believe what it's called
Okay,
Australian.
okay.
It is.
So just have to remember with the election of board members, this would have to still be a three-town meeting where people are elected by, they would be elected by the individual towns.
From what I read, I thought it was the town still elect, unless you do a different form of governance, where you have like Brattleboro was looking at, 12 at large and 3 from here.
But so what does it happen at the town meeting? School business happening at the town meeting? How would that?
Well, it's not at the meeting, it's at the, you go to the polls.
It will be
Then it's Australian ballot.
Right, that's what we're saying.
Oh, well, okay, if that's what you want, I thought you wanted to be a full vote.
Do we want it to be a 4 vote, or do you want it to have a ballot vote, where you have to get a petition, your name goes on the ballot, and you go in and check off who you want?
Are we talking about just electing the
Right.
future school board?
Yes.
Okay. So we're not talking about a budget vote at this point.
Right, budget vote has to be Australian ballot.
At this point.
At this point.
Right.
Okay.
So we're talking about electing board members only. Do we want to do it, so we have one town that does it in a meeting, and they nominate and vote at the meeting, and then we have 2 towns that do it by ballot? Yes.
The articles you've drafted allow each town to vote for their own representatives, right? So can we put the wording in there some way to say the town can decide how to elect their officers? Because that's essentially what's being done now. Wardsboro does it differently than the other 2 towns. Or is that complicated? And is that something?
Well, it definitely complicates it.
Yeah, well,
Whether you can do it or not, I don't know. I'd have to.
based on tradition, et cetera, yada, 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 because
Which is.
you guys wouldn't want to give that up, right?
The thing that,
Or maybe you would. Because then somebody has to have to raise their hand at town meeting and say, I'll do it, right? I've been to your meetings, I know what they're like.
the thing that I see as a roadblock is this calling of a 3-town meeting to do that. And then you just
No, no.
have to split up into residents of the, I'm just not sure how that could,
I
because
think
it shouldn't be a
happen on
town meeting.
election.
I'm not
Not
envisioning,
town meeting.
I'm envisioning
Yeah,
that
but
would
he's
happen
talking
at town
about a
meeting.
ballot. He's talking about a floor vote.
Oh.
Well, that's what Wardsboro does now.
Right, so I was trying to say, how would we give that back? Let the
Why
towns do it
why
differently.
why don't we hold off on this one? Why don't we let the Wardsboro delegation talk to the board and some people and see what the, if they're willing to do it by ballot, and if it's something that they really don't want to do, we can bring that up at the next meeting.
Whole week, I can cover that.
Well, hang on, Randy, go ahead, and then we'll get back to you guys.
Would you guys have to change in Wardsboro, would that have to go to a vote of the electorate? Change how you elect officers? Is there a statute, is there
It's a new board.
Is there a town charter? It's a new board, okay. So whatever was done in the past doesn't apply, because.
Correct.
Except for tradition.
Except for tradition.
And is that something that people would not vote for this because they don't want to go by ballot, they want to vote? So that's why I think.
I don't know, that's what they need to decide.
Right, so, why don't we let you guys kind of come back with a recommendation on what you think, and if you're hearing from a lot of people that a ballot's fine, then it's a moot point. If you're hearing from a lot of people it's do or die, then we need to really reconsider that. Go ahead.
And the way it currently exists, then a district can vote to change from Australian ballot back to floor vote. Would we want to build that into our articles as well?
That would be something the new board would do and propose to the voters.
So the second part of this question is, now, what about other public questions? So what about if we wanted to, vote to buy an airplane and fly the kids back and forth between the buildings? So do we want to do that by a meeting with a voice vote, or do we want to do all those kind of articles by an Australian ballot?
I will say, I think in places like Brattleboro where they have a meeting to pass budgets and millions of dollars and 4 people come, I think it would be better done by Australian ballot. I think you'd get better representation of the voters, rather than trying to say, oh, all the members of this district are to meet in Dover on a certain day.
Yeah,
I think you wouldn't have much representation.
Okay, any other thoughts from the committee? And then,
You had another member of this committee who was arguing pretty strongly to keep the floor vote, though, don't you?
Selena?
She's not here. But I think she argued pretty strong to try to keep
No,
it.
I don't think so.
Somebody did when we were out at Marlboro. Maybe it was one of the,
Oh.
No, you're thinking of the opposite. I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's very democratic that people don't, I was arguing that we need an Australian
keep
ballot for
Australia.
for budgets.
okay, I'll shut up.
I love town meeting, don't get me wrong.
Whoever it was passionate and made a good argument.
Yeah, they did.
I can't remember what they said.
So it wasn't a very good argument. We were talking at the town office in Marlboro, the town officer, manager and I and some other folks were talking about starting a meeting in September that would explain property bills, because that's when it comes out. And that's when we would have a town meeting to explain dollars and figures. And anyway, maybe as a way to get more people involved in the process through the year as budgeting takes place. So, I don't know, just put that out there.
one comment on the balloting, and most of you are all going the other way. I love the idea of a town meeting where people get together, because if nothing else, they have to at least listen to some reason why they're voting for this, other than just making up their mind that gosh darn school ain't getting another dime of my money and I'm gonna vote no.
Which is what I was just explaining.
I'm gonna yell loud.
Right, but
not
the
in March,
problem
not
is,
when the
Carol,
bill.
I've got the floor, okay?
Okay.
And the problem with that is that they can still, they'll make up their mind on what they wanna do, and you can have 12 informational meetings, and people don't go to them either, and they, at least if you're voting on an article, they have to be there, because they can walk in just as they're saying ayes and nays, and they can still say aye or nay, but they're gonna get infused with just a little bit of knowledge. And, if the other problem is sometimes people vote budgets down because they aren't high enough. They say, oh, we really wanted to increase something, and so you have you don't have any clue why that budget got voted down. And then, the state uses that as, hey, 12 budgets got voted down. Must be taxes are too high. Well, maybe 10 of those budgets got voted down because they didn't include a program they wanted, and they disapproved it. So you.
So you're arguing for a floor vote?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Am I right in thinking that there was something in here that said that the vote had to take place all at the same time in each town?
No,
In the Australian ballot,
In
yes.
the Australian ballot?
But
if it was a floor vote?
If it's a public meeting, it's the group.
One meeting.
Gray used to do it. They would have a big meeting in the gym.
Yeah.
They do it in Brattleboro now, like Dan was saying. And again, it's a $12 million, $14 million budget, 4 people show up. But at least those 4 people care enough to come and make a comment, and that's why, I still don't think it's wrong. I think people that just go vote, and there's a lot of people that vote and don't, they don't know why they're. So that's why I would really like, but.
If the budget's prepared by the.
Well, the budget has to be
Yeah,
Australian
it's all-
ballot. This would be for other articles. This would be if we want to build a new building, if we want to do something, if we want to make changes, this is what we're talking about. The budget has to be voted by Australian ballot unless the law changes. Go ahead.
So those would probably be special meetings anyway, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So.
Or it could be an annual meeting.
Yeah. Oh, I know what I was gonna ask. Can I still?
Yeah.
What is legal and grade? What is that?
They went to a ballot.
They went to a ballot.
Yeah, because they started having low turnout also.
Okay.
But again, we're not talking a 5-town, we're
Oh,
talking
we're talking 3
3
towns that are pretty passionate about
Yeah,
something.
and I think, I haven't been to a Newfane meeting in years, but we still have pretty good turnout. I know Marlboro does because I used to listen to Dr. John talk about it. And I think Wardsboro does too, because I've heard some people in Wardsboro talking about the length of the meetings sometimes.
It would be easier, I think, to go from a floor vote for public questions to an Australian ballot than to go the other way. I think that's right.
I think I'm not doing it, so I think we just strike it out.
Okay.
Well, you're gonna take show hands.
Okay, so show of hands. For other public articles, this is not the budget, and this is not the election of board members. This would just be any other thing that we're trying to look to do. There's two ways we can go, floor vote, meeting floor vote, or Australian ballot. Who's for Australian ballot by just show of hands? Who's for a public meeting with a floor vote? Wow. I screwed that.
You were wrong. You didn't read this.
Sorry. So, moving along, we gotta talk about selling a building to a town.
There's some language on, I think it's on the next page.
It's on page up.
Oh, okay. This is from Chittenden South, and I modified it, just, although it says Leland Gray, it shouldn't say Leland Gray,
We see which community you like.
but. No, you don't have high school.
This is hiding.
Well, anyway, the interesting part is, let's see, there's a. Well, why don't you just look through it? Oh, I know. Just the middle of the second paragraph. Union District shall convey such real property to the sum of $1, and here's the new part. And subject to all encumbrances of record, the assumption and payment of all outstanding bonds and notes, and the repayment of any school construction aid or grants as required by Vermont law to the town which is located.
So if a town gets its building back, then it comes back with all the debts associated with it.
Yes, this is what
Yes.
Wilmington is
Yes.
fighting now with the old high school. And, you know, you want to talk about tying the hands, the state of Vermont's concerned about us tying some future boards' hands and yet they tie everybody's hands and they don't seem to care.
But my understanding is there's a lot of forgiveness of this in Act 46. But I mean, do you want us, would the Union District want to sell a building for $1 and then have to pay off all the debts and stuff? You don't want to do that, I think.
No, so what we should write in here is that any sale, the state of Vermont will excuse any. No, I'm serious. Write it right in there, and then let the state of Vermont explain why they're not going to do that. We're bending to their thing, and then that will be our thing to stand on.
Yeah.
No? How come you're not having fun? Maybe if I talk a little more. Well, the new district assumes all debt.
Yeah.
But I think right now, none of us really have any debt. And some of us, we've got some reserves, so we're all in pretty good shape. But what happens is, let's just again say that for some reason in the town of Dover, everybody moves, because we're growing palm trees on Mount Snow, everybody moves to Marlboro and to Wardsboro, because you guys got more water now, and you got better water resources. And then the Dover school has one student in it. So we say, okay, you're gonna be going to the Marlboro school because you live on Higley Hill Road. And now we got this building we're not doing anything with. We still have to heat it, we still have to try to maintain it, we still gotta insure it, we can't let it become dilapidated. So that becomes a burden. And if we try to give it to the town for the $1, the state could say, hey, look, you know, you were given, back in 1970, Clyde Jones got, you know, $100,000 out of the state. We want that back, and we want the $500,000 we gave you when you built the addition. Plus, you know, it's really our school because we've been giving you money all these years under Act 60, you know, it came from us. So they could ask for some of the money back. So the town may say, well, we're not going to, what are we going to do with it? We don't want it. Nobody's going to buy it, do anything with, because they can't, you know, it's going to be $500,000 to buy the building. So what happens to it? It becomes a white elephant. And that's what, isn't Randy that what Wilmington's finding with their high school?
No, Wilmington, no, it's a little more complicated than that. You've already made it pretty complicated. But Wilmington just doesn't want to take it. They really aren't even arguing about money at this point. It's more about, I don't want to deal with it, so I don't want to hear about it.
But so the school board's having to deal with it, and it's become a problem for them.
Well, it's become an expense burden.
Yeah.
And what's gonna happen is, the cost savings that the Twin Valley District is starting to realize are gonna get eaten up by paying for that building. That's what's gonna happen. And so they're gonna be back, in 5 years, they could be back to where they were 5 years ago. John, are you proposing that we adopt all of this language? Or just that particular?
I haven't sort of picked out what we'll be putting in, but I just wanted to get a sense of are you willing to consider putting some of this kind of thing in the article about if you return a building, want to sell a building, to either the town or whoever else, that they carry the burden of returning any debts that
They being the
the buyers, any debts that come with this building.
Even if
Instead of
it's,
the school
even if
district.
it's a town.
Well,
Yeah,
if you read this, particularly.
because the school district wouldn't want to pay for it.
Yeah, and if you go to the next paragraph in this one, that's even more interesting.
Well, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, they're talking about the town shall compensate the unified school district for all capital improvements and renovations completed after the formation of the union district and prior to the sale to the town. If the town wants to sell the real property prior to 5 years of ownership. So they've put triggers in there that basically say, hey, town, you can buy it back from us, but then if you're gonna turn around and flip it, you gotta pay us for all the improvements we put into it. Which is very interesting.
However, they'd be presumably flipping it for market value at that point, so presumably.
You would assume
there'd be
so,
a point that
yeah.
they would be able to reimburse.
Unless they sold it to the state, who didn't have a lot of it.
So let's be really honest. How many school buildings are selling these days?
None.
And the other thing is, so just in Dover and Marlboro, who do you think would buy the Dover school or the Marlboro school? And what are you gonna do with it? I mean, there's no manufacturing, there's no, what would that building be good for?
A
It's not-
senior center?
Well, you don't know.
But then it's a
You don't know.
nonprofit or something.
Tear it down.
I just-
Well, I guess the point is, none of them are gonna be so encumbered that they would be a huge amount
Well,
of
all of
money.
them are encumbered by a lot because all of us got state aid at one
Right,
point.
But I mean, we're talking about, $100,000 or $150,000 perhaps encumberment, but I would think if you went and sold them on the real estate market, you could probably get considerably more than that for it.
John's right. I know there is some wording in Act 46 that relieves schools of that burden to pay state aid back. The problem with Twin Valley was they did their merger before Act 46, and that's one of the things they were fighting with the state.
I still would really like to see something in there, and I think that the school should take the burden if we have to sell it. And the only reason is because supposedly the state's giving us the money anyway, so they'll just have to give us more money. And I think it's difficult. I really think we should make a point of that because if we get rid of the building, I don't think it's gonna be that easy. I mean, I know in Brattleboro, they've tried
So
to.
if you sell the district, the Unified Union School District will be responsible for this list of things.
It has to be.
So I'll write it both ways, so you can take a look at it. It's fine.
Well, because the way,
This is a troublesome one. I want to get some advice too.
the way it's worded now is basically the town is required to have that for them, right?
No,
There is no.
no, because the third paragraph says in the event the town elects.
No, I'm not talking about the Chittenden, I'm talking about our article.
Oh, okay, right.
Right. Our article says it is required.
Our articles, we're gonna give it back to the town for $1.
Yeah.
I thought it said if they didn't want it.
So there
I
must
don't
be a
think-
caveat.
I don't think we do. Where is it? Transfer of real property?
Yeah, it just says return to the respective town for $1.
Yeah, I don't have it there. Maybe it's in there somewhere, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
And so the state says that's too restrictive? Or they just don't like it?
So they just don't like it.
Yeah, you said there's need much more than a single sentence about this.
The other thing
Let me
is,
keep working on it.
all our buildings are old enough that, they came before the state was giving us any money. It came when, you raise your taxes in-house and, everybody got a little bit of the state aid. But remember that in the 80s, state aid, the state started promising they still owe people. So maybe what we ought to do, John, is if it's an easy thing, let's throw the burden back on the state and have the state tell us what they expect from all three buildings, what they would expect back if we sold the buildings right now. and then maybe we can make a more informed decision.
Actually, that's a good point.
I appreciate the conversation, we've gotten very far with
Yeah.
it.
Well, you know what, if you're not getting, let me know, and we'll get some legislators on it, because we should really know that. because
You're right, because without that, you really.
I mean, if it's only $100,000 for all 3 buildings, or 50,000 a building or something, it's no brainer.
So the very last paragraph, John, would you propose that we consider that as well, or is that just here because it was part of the Chittenden South? Because if we do, the next to last line, after the, including a plan to close the school will be determined by.
Well, yeah, that was just
Okay.
part of this whole piece.
Okay, because we have other areas where we're.
Which isn't different.
Okay.
So are we okay with that? We'll wait and see, and then we need to think
Yeah, I
about
think we need
that.
to think about that.
And you also maybe need to talk to, like, your select boards or other, groups in town, and is there another use for the building? It's like a senior center, we're all getting older, I think. Caroline's getting younger all the time.
I will express publicly support for Rich's basic premise, which is, I think it's a good idea to push back a little bit on these things.
Thank you. You good? You good? You got all your answers?
Good, yes.
Okay, so now you have some information for us that you want to talk about.
These are the conclusions that you sent.
Is there still time to send conclusions down? I haven't done that.
Well, it's tonight.
This is a good one.
Okay, so listen up. The study committee has reached the following conclusions. Number 1, proposed merger is not positive for Marlboro. Lose its middle school, community involvement and ownership of all budget will be reduced, and there are few increased educational opportunities for Marlboro students. I could almost say though, if you took 1B out, and I think that's true for all towns, not just Marlboro. So you could do, for Marlboro, it's not positive because of these 2, but for all towns.
Well, let's go through them all before we start talking about them.
Well then, why don't we just take 2 minutes, everybody read through them, yeah, we'll just go through them. So when you're done reading, lay your head on the table, put your hand on top of your head.
Stick your pencil in your ear.
No, your pen, please.
Okay.
So there were 6 people.
2 people, 6 ideas. 2 people.
So just standing up.
I wasn't the one.
I figured I thought you submitted something. Yeah, you've got mine right here.
Which one is yours? Maybe somebody else.
I put in the thing about the closing the roads.
Right, I saw.
Oh, yeah, somebody just said it, had safety there. They give it to 4 people, so.
Oh, okay. Yes, sir.
I'm wondering if we could we put this off until our next meeting? I mean, we could go through these, but I feel remiss in that I haven't yet sent mine back in. If 4 people have, that means a good number.
Well, I tell you what, why don't, if you have something in mind, even if you want to expand on it later, why don't we're 8:15, we got another 15 minutes. Why don't we give some more stuff so that John can start working on it, so if you get caught up with something else, and why don't we, I'd like to go around and include the public after the board gets to speak, the group gets to speak, and then, just if you have other thoughts or big areas that you'd like to go on, Dan, so go ahead and start.
Well, no, let's go through these and I'll try to formulate what I was going to try to put.
Well,
together.
I'm saying let's leave these for now.
Oh, I see, and go
And
further
then
from
if
there.
if other people have other ones, since there's only 4, And then that way he can put them all together and maybe make it into a more concise paragraph or paragraphs. So does anybody want to start? Does anybody have anything else that, or even if you were one of the contributors and you want to add more, is there
Or you
anybody else?
disagree with some of these.
Am I allowed to speak?
No, let me get to the committee first and we'll get to the public. So is there anybody from the committee who'd like to speak? Go ahead, ma'am. Nobody wants to speak?
I don't agree with the first one, that the proposed merger is not positive for Marlboro. I think there are some benefits. If I was a parent with children still in the school, I would be very excited about Marlboro students having the opportunity, or Marlboro teachers having the opportunity for greater professional development and the International Baccalaureate program. I also think it's exciting what Dover has done with their preschool, and Marlboro could learn a lot from that. I understand that Title I funding is going to be changing, and that you can't just have a para-educator from Title I funding sitting with a child all day long and think that you're really getting at the needs of that child, that you have to have specific training, and educators work with those students in the areas where they're weak. So if a child is weak with math, you have to actually be taking Title I money to work with the student on math skills. And I think if we are a larger school district and you can then have your math expert in the school on Tuesdays in one school and in the other school on Wednesdays, that this shared math expert, just as by way of example, would be benefiting all children. These are just some of the way I think our music teacher at Marlboro is getting older. I would imagine she would retire, but I think, for example, having one music teacher who's been trained as a music educator in all the different instruments and music theory would benefit Marlboro. Those are just some of the ways I think that you could benefit. So I don't agree with the first one.
And Title I has changed.
I know it has.
Yeah, no, you'd say it was changed, but I mean, that is.
It has
now.
changed. I'm sorry, I used the wrong word.
Yeah, because I mean, that's created some issues for all the schools.
Right, and so it's going to change the financial landscape of how it's done now, so that would benefit the youngsters to have the real academic support that they need, rather than just an aide sitting with them.
Yes, Randy.
I have not submitted a conclusion yet, and as I thought about it, I'll tell you why. Because what we're really trying to do here is sum up the overall feelings of the committee. And as I read through the conclusions that have been submitted, to try to get the committee to call one of these out as the conclusion that everybody is going to agree on, I don't see how it's going to be possible. So, although I thought it was a good idea at the time when we brought this up, I'm not sure this is really the exercise we want to go through to get to a conclusion. And John, you can tell me if I'm wrong or not, but the conclusion is basically going to be our statement that says either we go forward with this and present it to the voters, or we don't. And I don't think that we're at that point yet. I don't think we're even close to it. Maybe we are close, but we certainly are not at that point. So I'm not sure where we go with this. Rich.
My suggestion would be is you take the position that you're going to write a conclusion that you are going to submit it to the voters. See if that works for you.
Okay, that changes the thought process.
And then you can say, this just doesn't work. It's not strong enough, and so now our conclusion is we're not going to take it to the vote. I think, or take one or the other. I don't care which one you start with, but.
Well, let's start with. It's a good point, but let's start with, because we were formed to bring something to the voters, to study, to see if we can bring something. So let's start with that. And I think that's a good point when you do that, John. We'll all give you something that is in the positive for this, that we should move this plan forward. And what have we seen that's positive that we can use for a conclusion? Is everybody good with that?
So are we doing that now?
We can do that now, yeah. We can give something to John now if you have something positive now. If not, we'll submit it in writing to him, via email, and then he'll put it together for our next meeting in Marlboro. Is that okay with the committee? Yes, Dan.
I'm just going back to the example of number one there. I feel that those things would be hard to be spun as something positive about this committee, but I think they're equally important as a positive.
So the other thing I've seen is I've seen minority reports done by groups of the committee, but I think what we need to do is here's just my thinking on what Randy was saying is, so we come up with something that says this is good because of these reasons, A, B, C, D, E, F. And we all, as a group, say, okay, we're happy with this, let's have a vote, and we vote, and it's 5-3. And so the 5, that would mean that would carry. Then I've seen where other groups have said, okay, well, we're the 3 people that voted against it, this is why we voted against it, and I think that's appropriate to go. I'm not sure exactly where or how we do that, but I'm going to ask John to look into that so that it can be a balanced report.
Well, let me just comment on it, because I think your conclusion would be, these are the positive things we see about this. Here are the drawbacks we see about this. And our conclusion is there are enough positives to present to the voters. Our conclusion is there are not enough positives to present to the voters.
And do we not show the voters what we think are the negative things?
No, that's what I said. You're saying, here are the.
You put it all in there. I think you have to do that.
It's all in the conclusion.
Because you have to have the pros and cons.
Remember, the conclusion is not in the articles. The conclusion is that preliminary, that whole first 15 pages, 10 pages.
In the report.
In the report. So that's a public document. Let me get Anita on that.
That's fine.
So I'm thinking of how to explain this to the public every time you people say something. If you come to the conclusion that it's not worth putting before the voters, then what do the voters do after that? Just go, oh, okay.
Well, it won't get put before the voters, so the voters don't have to worry about it.
And then they just accept whatever the state mandate comes down for school governance.
Well, that's because that's going to change. I'm going to give him something else to add. You know, my thought on that is I feel there are pros and cons to this, and I think though the only way the voters get to weigh in on this is if we present it to the voters. The voters get to decide.
And that's the point I think we have to get to. I think we all agree we've got to get something to the voters.
Yeah.
The question is, how do we word it to reflect that there are both positive and negative feelings
And I
about this?
think he does that. You know, here's why we're presenting it to the voters, and the reason can be also we feel our hands are somewhat tied.
Yeah.
In the state.
So
I
the
mean, let's be
voters
honest.
would have the opportunity to override your negative conclusion and vote for it anyway. That's the part I didn't get. Thank you.
Or vice versa?
The vote.
And you
remember,
don't have
the voters are
to,
always
I don't
right.
think that you need a recommendation for the voters. I think you just need to say, here's what we learned, here are the positives, here are the drawbacks, and we're presenting this to you for your decision.
Yeah, I think that's the sort of hit it down the middle way of presenting it.
Because it certainly doesn't want to come across as a done deal in either direction.
Oh, God,
It's
no.
up to the.
So I'm stepping down, Dwight's running the meeting, so I just want to make a comment. So in Dover, we've kind of had this conversation informally, and what we're going to do is, once this report is done and this committee's done its job, and then it goes to the voters, you know, we as a Dover School Board are going to look at it, and we got to decide, you know, how we're going to go, because the voters are going to look to us as a school board to say, is this good or bad? And, you know, we've done 3 different things before on articles that have been come up before, you know, the voters. We've either said, yeah, we recommend you do this, we recommend you don't, or, you know, we're really not taking a stand on this. Here's the information, what more do you need? And you guys, you know, you as the voters need to decide. And we're here to get you that information. We're not, you know, we're not going either way. And I think each board is going to do that, because remember, this is not a vote of, you know, it's a vote of the individual towns have to do it. So that's just one of the ways we're looking at it in Dover, to kind of cover, you know, whatever the conclusion is and stuff. Because remember, as a school board then, and as a voter, you don't, once the committee's done with their work, they're done, and then it goes on to that group. So that was something we were going to do, and that may help some of you guys on the other boards. Thank you. So where are we going, John?
Well, I think you can either list, or you can send me, you know, bullets for the positives and the negatives. I'm not saying it that way, but, and then I'll put them into a format, and at the bottom I'll say, and after considering these, we believe it's the voters, you know, something about the voters.
It has to go to the voters.
You know, that needs to be a decision from the voters.
I'd like to send this to you.
Yeah.
I think now that we've had this talk,
Yeah.
I feel better about putting something down on paper and send it to you.
I would encourage you just to review the note I sent you about student opportunities. I think it was an October 4 memo. And at the very bottom, I put just a potential conclusion. It's not what we're talking about now, but it may trigger some thoughts.
When would you like that? Monday?
When do we meet?
Next Thursday.
Next Thursday, so if I had it by Tuesday, if I had it by Tuesday night, that would be excellent.
Well, I'm gonna push you guys, let's do it by Monday, get stuff to him over the weekend.
Then I get it back to you.
Because then you
Yes.
can get it back to us
Yes.
and we can look at it.
That'd be great.
That's helpful.
Process. And we're starting to run out of time, we're getting into the winter, you know, we gotta go to Route 9 next meeting, and who knows if Route 9 is.
I'm gonna go 3 days early.
Yeah, watch out for rain.
You have to ski.
Yeah, skiing.
So,
Yes, sir.
can we talk about the timeline, or are we still?
No, let's just finish up on this, and then we've got that, we'll do that on the next and future meetings. So, on the articles, there's, again, we started reading through them, and we went through them. I asked everybody to make sure you read them in their entirety. Is there any other areas that people saw concerns that they'd like to bring up? I know, Jill, I think you had a couple that you sent me an email on, and I couldn't find it easily before I left the house. So is there any, did you have something else that I'm missing?
I know my biggie was the transportation and safety issue.
I don't want to put you on the spot. Is there, did anybody else look at in there and see anything else? Or can we fairly easily say that with the exception of the selling the building and the exception of the conclusion, are you guys satisfied with the articles and the report that John did submitted to us?
You want to take a vote on that? Or just?
Well, I'm gonna get there in a second. Yes?
I guess can I find it on the blog, the update on where you netted out with the contracts and with teachers and negotiation? And
The draft of the articles is not posted on the blog because I have not been given permission to post any drafts.
okay, so how would I find one around where you guys netted out on that?
Well, can we put that out now that we've kind of...
I think you're close enough to be able to put it out.
So you'll give me a cleaned up copy and I can...
And I'll also give you the copy after I've made the other changes at the
Yeah,
state.
why don't we wait until he makes the other changes? So there's gonna be two spots that it's gonna be a little open. It'll be the sell of the building, the conclusion. And everything else, you've got all your answers and we'll vote
He
it.
still needs some numbers.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
From Dover.
From Dover.
From Dover, so I have to go.
So there's 3 things.
Okay. You need to call Mark and get, I don't think the audit's done it.
Just the 2015 audit.
Okay.
It's the only one I can copy.
Okay, so it'll be out to you shortly.
I'll also send you all the comments from the state. If you don't feel like, don't worry about it, but I'll send them to you so you
Yeah, I
have it.
appreciate that.
So,
Here,
how do I?
that's the one we've been looking at. Can you pass that over here?
So, can I email that to you last time, tomorrow?
That was 3 weeks ago,
Has that changed? I guess
Yeah.
it's changed since then.
Yes,
and,
there was a version 3.
Right.
Okay, so I think, are we okay with that then? So please get back to him, and if you see anything else, you know, that has a major concern to you, just send it to me, and then I can send it to John, just so I can get it to everybody and make sure we're all on the same page. But really, this is your one homework assignment. If you don't do it, you're gonna have to sit in the corner. Dan, do you have a place for the bad students to sit in the corner?
Yeah, there are no corners. It's like Leland and Gray, there are no corners.
Okay.
We're all 22 and a half degrees.
Okay, so we're all good.
We got for an
You
hour
know,
the other day.
the other thing, you guys did an excellent job because we really had, I mean, this is really kind of, this is like starting a new country. This is like pulling the Constitution. Yes, you're doing a great job.
Oh, thanks.
Okay, so we're at 8:30, the parking lot. Just, you want to let us know how we were embraced doing that? You know,
There's some politics in that group that are really sort of almost freezing them in some ways.
This is
The Leland and Gray study group. But I will say that I'm much more hopeful that they're going to be ready to come out with something than it was a month ago. So they're addressing some tough questions. They're compromising with one another. They're still a week or 2 weeks behind you, but I think they're going to make something. In the long run, if they don't do anything, they are totally appropriate candidates for the Secretary of Education to put together. I mean,
We're already there, basically.
yeah, so, I would just have a hard time imagining it. But if they don't produce something, then they're not your other half on the side by side.
Well, that's where I.
And that's the problem.
Yeah, but again, I think we have a really easy argument with the state saying that, hey, look, we did our stuff, and we voted for it, or we voted, and, let us be humans. Everybody good? Yeah?
Oh, sorry, when we use this for questions?
Sure, you got a question about?
I have two questions. My first question is, so we're doing, in Marlboro, we have like a backup plan that if the voters don't want to do this, that we've been working very, very hard on the alternative structure route. Wardsboro and Dover aren't doing that, right? So you don't have a backup, or you're just gonna...
Well, here's the deal. If there's a no vote, or the study committee doesn't present anything, or whatever, if there's no union formed, then there's a whole process that after, I forget the date, but there's a whole process that you have to go through. So you have to do a self-study. Each district will have to do a self-study. You have to sit down again with the same people and talk about how you can collaborate and come up with specific actions, how you're going to do that. And then you submit that to the secretary. The secretary says, here's what I think you ought to do. I think you ought to merge, you ought to do this, you ought to do that, you ought to be this alternative structure. And then that goes to the state board, and I believe it's November 30 of 2018.
Yeah, I know, I'm just curious what Dover and Wardsboro's thinking is on that.
This is what's going to happen.
I would say in Dover right now, we're just kind of in a holding pattern until we see what this group does and what the voters say.
Okay.
But where we could be, if this group doesn't work or the voters don't want to do it, that's part of the alternative study, is to say, hey, we did this study, we looked into joining other schools. Either they said no, or our voters said no, and this is where we're going to move forward. I think, Mike, you want to talk about, has Wardsboro had that discussion?
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is this is our merger opportunity based on what the state is forcing everyone to do.
Right.
If we already don't know what our voters are going to say.
You don't know, no, you don't.
So we're not going to spend time on a plan B that we don't know what they're going to vote on.
So you just want to wait, okay.
Well, I think both of you, we're in a different position because of the middle school
Correct.
situation.
Yeah, that's true.
And so that
Yeah.
in many ways we have to.
And we knew that from the start, the original agreement kind of, Wyndham Central had been that because Marlboro had that middle school component, that we would have that discussion, and I think we beat that up pretty heavy, and Marlboro made our decision really easy by saying, don't worry about us, let's look at the K-6, we're gonna work on something else, and then, we'll work with the voters to decide that, so I think that's an appropriate thing.
And my other question was, how many of you have to take a vacation day to go to town meeting? A personal vacation, you own your own business, so that you're the boss.
I can't take any vacation.
Yeah, that's true.
I take a vacation day.
You take a vacation day?
Wardsboro does a school board meeting, or school town meeting, what would you call it?
You do it
The
Monday
night before.
We do it the night before for the school board, and then the night before town meeting, and then there's town
We
meeting.
vote on
in
the budget
addition.
the night before.
So you're asking about specifically town
So you
meeting
don't
or
have
school
to,
board?
so people don't have to take a vacation day to participate? if
For
they
the school
come-
board portion.
For the school board
We do the
portion.
night prior to town meeting.
Okay, you all set, man?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So we covered parking lot 835, we're perfect.
Just one question.
Yeah.
This just raised a flag for me. Is the Australian ballot date correct?
We all want to do it at town
Town
meeting,
meeting.
yes.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I've
So-
heard people saying things are happening the night before, votes are happening the night before.
Well, if you just say town meeting,
Right,
They'll
theirs just have to be an
sort it out.
Australian ballot, it'll be a town meeting, it'll be the day after.
Okay.
Right, it's submitted as part of the
Okay,
entire.
I just wanted to make sure.
Okay, so part of the future meetings is, let's look at the timeline. Randy, I think you had a question?
we've got a meeting next week scheduled and a tentative meeting on the 17th. And I'm thinking back to I think it was our meeting in Marlboro. We talked about trying to have this ready for a vote by the committee before Thanksgiving. Are we still on that timeline? Does everybody still feel good about that? Are we looking at that next week or are we 2 weeks away? That's a lot of questions.
I don't think we're gonna be ready next week, because I think if we're submitting stuff to John on the conclusion, that's gonna be an important part of it. So I'm thinking maybe the week after.
So we're looking at meeting on the 17th. Does everybody feel good that we're on target to vote on that? Because if we don't vote then, we're really into December at that point.
I have to admit, I was hoping it'd be sooner, I might be here,
On the 17th?
right?
Well, can we give her an absentee ballot?
No, but you know what we can try to do? Well, let's talk about that next meeting. Let's see. I mean, the other thing is, John, everybody may do their work and send stuff to John, and John may send it out, and we may get it all hashed out.
We're really not that far apart.
Right.
Can you attend on FaceTime?
The problem is not only is the technology thing we've been having issues with. So let's just go to the next meeting and let's just see where we stand at the next meeting. If we're ready to vote on it next meeting,
Then we
maybe
should
at
vote
that
on
point.
it. Yeah.
And if you make that the sole agenda, let's just,
Well,
just
the
focus on
only
that.
thing, that's all we've been making.
Yeah, it's just gonna be the article.
You've got to get the assets and the debts.
Yeah.
We'll have a brief, real quick communication update, and that's all we've really been doing. We're doing the business we have to do. So, is that your only question on this?
Yes, that's it.
Okay. So we should have our next meeting in Marlboro on the 10th, and then we'll meet in Dover on the 17th if we need it.
If we need it.
Is there any issues with that?
As,
Yes.
as part of the assets and debts, are we gonna come to an agreement on where each, school comes in with reserve and future projects and such? Do we have to have that discussion?
No,
Prior.
what you'll have is, you'll just have the information of where you were
Okay,
at the end of the audit from 2015.
no future decision.
The future board would have to negotiate and figure that out with the school districts.
Okay,
There's no-
so we won't decide what level each school comes in at.
I don't think we wanna do that.
I don't even think you can.
That's-
There's just not even enough data.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cheers, I got an issue. We all set? Everybody good? 1, 2, 3, break. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
No, you gotta make it.
Motion.
Second.
Randy, Mike moved, Randy seconded. It's 8:39, we're pretty close.
Pretty good.
Hey, before we go to Lisa, I just throw something out that has nothing to do with our meeting, but something you guys might want to pay attention. If anybody's been following the proposed rules that the State Board of Education is looking at to impose on independent schools around the state.
I saw that article.
Yeah.
The article on Digger that Oliver Olson is really pushing this, really important. to pay
We've
attention to.
adjourned, though. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Oh, sorry, I thought you said that.